I am Verna, 34 years old, and I built my life from scratch. My design business finally took off after years of hustle, and I bought my dream home last year. Then one Tuesday, I came back to find my unemployed brother, Jason, had moved in courtesy of our parents. They called to inform me I would be supporting him indefinitely. What happened next changed everything between us. The courtroom was dead silent when the judge delivered the final verdict. Let me know where you are watching from and hit subscribe to find out what happened in court that ended it all. My journey to success was not an easy one. After graduating with my interior design degree, I spent years building my client base one small project at a time. I lived in a tiny studio apartment, sometimes working 16 hours a day, sacrificing weekends and holidays to meet deadlines. My parents never understood my passion, constantly suggesting I find a real job with benefits and stability. But I persisted. 10 years of hard work finally paid off when I landed contracts with several high-end developers. My business grew from just me to a team of 5 designers. Last year at 33, I finally saved enough for a down payment on my dream home. It was not a mansion by any means, but it was mine. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a beautiful sunroom I converted into my home office. The pride I felt signing those mortgage papers was indescribable. My family dynamics never made things easy. My parents, Margaret and Richard, raised us with traditional values in a small Midwestern town. Family was supposed to come first, but their definition of family often seemed to exclude me. My younger brother, Jason, now 29, was always the golden child. He was 5 years younger than me, and from the moment he was born, my parents made it clear he was special. Jason had every advantage growing up. When I needed money for art supplies, for school projects, I was told to get a part-time job. When Jason wanted the latest gaming system, my parents bought it without hesitation. When I needed help with college tuition, my parents said they had limited savings. When Jason wanted to attend an expensive private university, they took out a second mortgage on their house. The pattern continued into adulthood. Jason dropped out of college after 3 semesters, claiming it was stifling his creativity. My parents defended his decision, saying college was not for everyone. Meanwhile, they had criticized my choice of studying design, calling it impractical. Jason bounced between jobs, never keeping one for more than a few months. He was fired from a retail position for showing up late. He quit a restaurant job because the manager was disrespecting him by asking him to come in on weekends. He walked out on an office job because it was too corporate. Through it, all my parents made excuses for him. Jason is finding himself. Jason is too intelligent for these entry-level positions. Jason has a creative spirit that cannot be confined to traditional employment. Meanwhile, my achievements were minimized. When I signed my first major client, my mother said, "That is nice, but do they offer health insurance?" When I won a local business award, my father asked if I was saving enough for retirement. When I bought my house, my mother wondered aloud if I had made a hasty decision taking on such a large mortgage. I tried helping Jason several times. I referred him to contacts in my network, created a position in my company that would suit his skills, and even offered to help him go back to school. Each time he found reasons to decline, the job was beneath him. The hours did not suit his lifestyle. The school was not prestigious enough. Over the years, I tried establishing boundaries with my family. I limited visits to holidays and special occasions. I stopped sharing details about my finances or business successes to avoid the inevitable criticism. I deflected questions about when I would settle down or have children. But no matter how firm I tried to be, my parents always found ways to cross those boundaries, especially when it came to Jason. What happened next was the culmination of years of this dysfunctional family dynamic. I never imagined they would go so far, but looking back, perhaps I should have seen it coming. That fateful Tuesday began like any other. I had meetings with clients all day, finalizing designs for a boutique hotel project that could take my business to the next level. It was exhausting, but exciting work. By the time I headed home around 7 in the evening, I was mentally drained, but satisfied with the progress. The first sign something was wrong was the unfamiliar beat-up sedan parked in my driveway. I initially thought a neighbor had a visitor who mistakenly parked at my house. Annoyed, but not alarmed, I pulled into the garage and entered through the connecting door to my kitchen. The smell hit me first. Cigarette smoke mixed with stale beer. I do not smoke, and I rarely drink. Then I heard the blaring sound of a video game coming from my living room. My heart started pounding as I walked down the hallway. There, sprawled on my cream-colored sofa with his dirty boots propped up on my coffee table, was Jason. Empty pizza boxes, beer cans, and cigarette butts littered the surfaces around him. A large duffel bag and several cardboard boxes were stacked in the corner of the room. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" I demanded, my voice shaking with shock and anger. Jason barely looked up from his game. "Oh, hey sis. Mom and Dad said you would not mind if I crashed here for a while." His casual tone suggested this was a completely normal situation. "How did you even get in?" I asked, noticing my spare key was no longer hanging on its hook by the door. "Mom gave me her copy of your key, said it would be easier than waiting for you to get home." He shrugged, eyes still fixed on the television screen. Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was my mother. I answered, stepping into the kitchen for some privacy, though I was already shouting, "Mom, why is Jason in my house? Why did you give him my key without asking me?" "Verna, calm down," my mother replied with that patronizing tone she always used when she thought I was overreacting. "Your brother needed a place to stay. He was evicted from his apartment because that horrible landlord raised the rent without proper notice. We would have taken him in ourselves, but you know, your father's back has been acting up, and we do not have the space since we converted the spare bedroom into your father's hobby room." This was news to me. Last I heard, my father's hobby room was still a perfectly functional bedroom with a pull-out couch. "That does not give you the right to move him into my house without even asking me," I protested. "He is your brother Verna," my mother said firmly. "Family helps family. It is just temporary until he gets back on his feet. Maybe a few months at most. A few months." I nearly screamed into the phone. "Now do not be selfish. You have that big house all to yourself. Your brother needs support right now. He is going through a difficult time." The conversation continued in this vein for several minutes. My mother dismissed every objection I raised. When I reminded her that it was my house that I paid for, she accused me of being materialistic. When I pointed out that Jason had a history of temporary situations becoming permanent, she said I was being uncharitable. When I suggested he could stay with them, she cited a dozen reasons why that was impossible. Finally, my father got on the phone. "Verna, this is not up for debate. Your brother needs help, and you are in a position to provide it. That is what family does. We expect you to step up and do the right thing here." After hanging up, I returned to the living room to confront Jason directly. I told him he needed to leave, that he could not stay at my house. Jason finally paused his game and looked at me with an expression of practiced hurt. "Wow, that is cold, sis." "Mom and Dad said, you were cool with this. Where am I supposed to go?" "That is not my problem," I insisted. "Mom and Dad had no right to offer my house without asking me." "Look," he said, his tone turning manipulative, "I am really in a tough spot. I just need a place to crash for a little while until I figure things out. You will hardly even notice I am here." I stood firm. "No, Jason, you need to find somewhere else to stay tonight." His expression darkened. "Mom and Dad gave me permission to be here. They gave me the key. Legally, I am allowed to stay." I did not know if that was true, but the confidence with which he said it gave me pause. It was getting late, and I was exhausted from my workday. Fighting with Jason when he was in this mood would be pointless. "We will discuss this tomorrow," I said finally. "But this is not a done deal." I retreated to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. I could hear Jason resume his game, the volume even louder than before. I called Lauren, my best friend since college, but it went to voicemail. I texted her a brief SOS about the situation. That night, I barely slept. I could hear Jason moving around the house well past midnight, opening and closing the refrigerator, talking loudly on his phone. It felt like my sanctuary had been invaded, and my parents had handed over the keys to the invader. 1 week with Jason in my house was enough to push me to the breaking point. Any hope that he might be a considerate house guest vanished within the first 24 hours. He treated my home like a hotel where he was the only guest that mattered. Each morning, I would wake to find the kitchen in disarray. Dishes piled in the sink, food left out overnight, crumbs and spills unwiped. When I asked Jason to clean up after himself, he would shrug and say, "I will get to it later." But later never came. He slept until noon most days, then spent hours playing video games or watching television at volumes that made it impossible for me to work from home. I was forced to go to my office every day, extending my commute and disrupting my usual workflow. Jason made no effort to find a job. When I asked about his plans, he would vaguely mention opportunities he was exploring or contacts he was waiting to hear back from. But I never saw him send out resumes or make job-related calls. The final straw came when I returned home on Friday evening to find 5 strangers in my living room drinking my expensive wine and smoking inside the house. Jason had invited friends over without asking and given them free rein of my home. "You need to tell your friends to leave," I said firmly, trying to keep my composure despite my rising anger. "Come on, sis. Do not be such a buzzkill," Jason replied, the others snickering behind him. "It is Friday night. We are just hanging out." "This is my house, Jason. My rules. No smoking inside. No parties without permission." One of his friends, a heavy-set guy with a patchy beard, raised his glass. "Your sister needs to chill, man. This is a sweet pad." I stood my ground, and eventually they left, but not before one of them spilled red wine on my white carpet and another broke a decorative vase I had brought back from a trip to Italy. Jason made no offer to pay for the damages. The next day, my parents showed up unannounced. I had just finished cleaning up the mess from the previous night when they walked in using the key they had apparently kept without my knowledge. "We thought we would check in on you two," my mother said cheerfully, as if this was a normal family visit. "How is everything going?" Before I could answer, my father cut in. "Jason tells us you have been a bit difficult about his stay here." I was dumbfounded. "Difficult? He trashed my house last night with his friends." My mother waved dismissively. "Boys will be boys. He is just trying to maintain his social connections. That is important for networking and finding new job opportunities." They insisted we all sit down in the living room for a family meeting. That was when they dropped the real bombshell. "We think Jason should stay here indefinitely," my father announced, "until he gets properly established." "Indefinitely," I repeated in disbelief. "Number?" "Absolutely not. This was supposed to be temporary, and even that I never agreed to." "Verna," my mother said in her most disappointed tone, "we raised you to understand that family comes first. Your brother needs support right now." "Support is one thing. Having him move in permanently is another." My father leaned forward, his expression stern. "We expect you to help with his expenses, too. Nothing major, just food, maybe some spending money until he finds work. And of course, covering the utilities since they will be higher with him here." I could not believe what I was hearing. "You want me to financially support him, too? He is 29 years old." "He is going through a rough patch," my mother insisted. "You have a successful business. You can afford to help your brother." The conversation deteriorated from there. Every point I made was dismissed. Every boundary I tried to establish was ignored. My parents had already decided that Jason was my responsibility now, and they expected me to accept this without question. After they left, Jason's behavior grew even worse. He started using my car without permission, claiming his was having mechanical issues. I would find it returned with the gas tank empty. He began eating food I had specifically purchased for myself, including expensive ingredients I needed for client dinner preparations. Then one day I discovered a charge on my credit card that I did not recognize, a $300 purchase at an electronics store. When I confronted Jason, he admitted he had borrowed my card because he needed a new gaming headset. "You will pay me back immediately," I demanded. He laughed. "With what money? You know I am broke. Besides, what is $300 to you? You can afford it." The situation reached a new level of absurdity when Jason's girlfriend, Kelly, showed up with her own suitcase. Without consulting me, Jason had invited her to move in too. She was a petite woman with an entitled attitude that matched Jason's. "Jason said you were cool with me staying here," she said when I questioned her presence. "We are trying to save money by living together." "Save money?" I repeated incredulously. "Neither of you is paying any rent." Jason shrugged. "Well, that is the point. We need to save up before we can afford our own place." I was at my wit's end. I called Lauren, who had been hearing updates about this nightmare situation for the past week. "This is getting out of control," I told her. "They are treating my house like they own it. My parents are enabling this behavior and making me feel like I am the unreasonable one." Lauren, who worked as a corporate attorney, did not mince words. Verna, this is not just inconsiderate. What they are doing could have legal implications. If Jason and his girlfriend establish residency in your home, it could be difficult to remove them without a formal eviction process. What? But it is my house. Yes, but tenant rights are complicated. If they receive mail there or can prove they have been living there for a certain period, they might be considered tenants even without a lease or rent payments. Lauren advised me to consult with a lawyer who specialized in property rights and family law. This situation is not going to resolve itself. Your family is taking advantage of you, and you need to protect yourself legally before this gets worse. I took her advice and scheduled a consultation with a lawyer for the following week. Little did I know that things would escalate dramatically before that appointment ever took place. 3 weeks into Jason's unwelcome stay, I came home early from work because a client meeting had been canceled. The house was empty, which was unusual since Jason rarely left except to meet friends. I took the opportunity to clean up the guest room where he had been staying, hoping to at least maintain some standards in my own home. When I opened the closet to put away some of his scattered clothes, I noticed something odd. My grandmother's antique jewelry box, which I kept in my bedroom, was sitting on the shelf. My heart pounding, I opened it to find it completely empty. The pearl necklace, silver bracelet, and emerald earrings my grandmother had left me were gone. In a panic, I began searching the room more thoroughly. I found pawn shop receipts tucked into Jason's jacket pocket, not just for my grandmother's jewelry, but also for my tablet, my wireless headphones, and several other valuable items I had not even noticed were missing. I was still processing this discovery when I heard the front door open. Jason walked in, stopping short when he saw me in his room with the evidence in my hands. "What are you doing going through my stuff?" he demanded, immediately going on the offensive. "What am I doing? What are you doing selling my belongings?" I held up the receipts. "This is theft, Jason. You stole from me and sold my things." For a moment he looked caught, but then his expression shifted to one of defiance. "I needed the money. It is not like you cannot replace that stuff. You make plenty." That is not the point. Some of these things were irreplaceable. Grandma's jewelry had sentimental value. He shrugged. "Family is supposed to share. You have so much and I have nothing. I am just trying to get by until I find a job." "Are you even looking for a job?" I asked, my voice rising with anger and disbelief. "Of course I am. It is not my fault the economy sucks." His defensive tone told me everything I needed to know. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. "Jason, I want the truth. Why were you really kicked out of your apartment? Mom said your landlord raised the rent unfairly." He avoided my eyes. "Something like that." "Number, tell me the truth, or I am calling the police about the stolen items right now." After a tense silence, he finally admitted, "Fine. I was fired from my job for borrowing money from the register. It was not a big deal, just a misunderstanding. But my boss overreacted. Without income, I could not pay rent, so I got evicted." "Borrowing money? You mean stealing from your employer?" "I was going to pay it back," he insisted. "They did not need to fire me over it." I was stunned. "Do Mom and Dad know about this?" His hesitation told me they did. They understand that sometimes things happen. They know I did not mean any harm. I immediately called my parents, putting the phone on speaker so Jason could not later claim I misrepresented the conversation. "Jason was fired for stealing money from his job," I said as soon as my mother answered. "That is why he was evicted. Did you know that when you moved him into my house?" There was a pause before my mother responded. "Verna, it is more complicated than that. Your brother made a mistake, but he deserves a second chance. Everyone does." "A second chance? This is more like his 20th chance. And now he is stealing from me, too. He pawned Grandma's jewelry." "I am sure he was just borrowing it," my mother said weakly. "Borrowing? He sold it." I was nearly shouting now. "How can you keep defending him?" My father took the phone. "Now listen here, Verna. Your brother has had some setbacks, but he is family. We stand by family no matter what." "Even when they steal? Even when they lie? Where do you draw the line?" "He is our son," my father said, as if that explained and excused everything. "And I am your daughter," I replied, my voice breaking. "But you have never given me the same unconditional support you give him." The conversation ended with my parents still defending Jason and minimizing his actions. They suggested I was being materialistic for caring about mere possessions more than my brother's welfare. After hanging up, I told Jason he needed to leave my house immediately. He refused, claiming again that he had established residency and that I could not legally force him out without proper eviction proceedings. I was at my breaking point, but things were about to get even worse. 2 days later, I came home to find Jason and Kelly hosting another party. This time, the damage was extensive. Someone had spilled wine on my sofa. There were burns on the hardwood floors from cigarettes. My framed professional certifications had been taken off the wall and one was cracked. I ordered everyone out and had another explosive argument with Jason and Kelly. They retreated to the guest room, locking the door and refusing to engage further. The next morning, I discovered something that chilled me to the bone. My personal filing cabinet had been broken into. Documents containing my financial information, including bank statements, investment accounts, and property deed, were scattered across the desk in the guest room. My checkbook was missing several checks from the back, and my passport was out of its usual storage place. When I confronted Jason, he claimed he was just looking for some paperwork and accused me of overreacting. But a call to my bank confirmed my worst fears. Someone had attempted to open a line of credit using my personal information. Fortunately, the bank had flagged it as suspicious and declined the application. I immediately called Lauren, who connected me with Michael, a lawyer specializing in property rights and identity theft. After explaining the situation, including Jason's theft of my belongings, the unauthorized parties, the damage to my property, and now the attempted identity theft, Michael did not mince words. "This is serious, Verna. Beyond the civil issues of unwanted tenants, there are criminal matters at play here. Identity theft, property theft, and fraudulent financial activity are all crimes. You need to act immediately to protect yourself and your assets." Michael advised me to file police reports for the stolen items and the attempted identity theft. He also suggested a bold strategy for removing Jason and Kelly from my home. Given the circumstances, including the destruction of property and criminal activity, we can seek an emergency court order, but you also need to protect your remaining assets immediately. The plan was risky and would likely cause a permanent rift with my family. But as I looked around at my once beautiful home, now damaged and violated, I knew I had no choice. My parents had forced my hand by enabling Jason's behavior for years, and now bringing his chaos into my life. That night, I made my decision. I would take back control of my life and my home, no matter the cost. I waited until I knew Jason and Kelly would be out for several hours. They had fallen into a predictable pattern of sleeping until noon, then leaving around 2 p.m. to meet friends, usually not returning until evening. I had called in sick to work, something I rarely did, to put my plan into action. At precisely 2:30 p.m., after confirming they had left, the moving company I had hired arrived. I had spent the previous evening carefully packing my most important and valuable possessions: family photos, important documents, irreplaceable mementos, and essential clothing. Now the movers efficiently loaded everything else I wanted to keep: my furniture, appliances, remaining clothing, kitchenware, electronics, artwork, books. Everything that made the house a home was systematically removed and loaded into the moving truck. I supervised the entire process, checking off items on my inventory list to ensure nothing important was left behind. By 5 p.m., the house was nearly empty. I left behind only the items that belonged to Jason and Kelly, neatly piled in the center of the living room. I did one final walkthrough, my footsteps echoing on the bare floors. The house I had worked so hard to buy, the home I had lovingly furnished and decorated, now felt like an empty shell. With a heavy heart but resolute determination, I locked the door behind me and drove to the local police station. There I filed detailed reports about the theft of my grandmother's jewelry and other possessions, providing the pawn shop receipts as evidence. I reported the attempted identity theft, sharing the information from my bank about the fraudulent credit application. I documented the damage to my property with photographs I had taken. The police officer taking my statement was sympathetic. "Family situations like this are always difficult," she said, "but theft and identity theft are serious crimes regardless of who commits them." After leaving the police station, I went directly to my lawyer's office. Michael had prepared all the necessary paperwork. We filed for an emergency restraining order against Jason and Kelly based on the police reports and evidence of property destruction. We also filed for a formal eviction, though Michael explained that the restraining order, if granted, would effectively accomplish the same goal more quickly. The judge will likely grant the temporary restraining order, given the evidence of criminal activity, Michael explained. That will legally bar them from entering your property until the formal hearing. We also filed a civil suit for damages to my property and the value of the stolen items. Michael suggested we include my parents in the suit, since they had facilitated the situation by giving Jason access to my home without permission. I know that is a difficult step to take, he said gently, but they need to understand the seriousness of their actions. Giving someone access to another person's home without consent has legal consequences. I agreed, though it broke my heart to take legal action against my own family. But they had left me no choice. While waiting for the court proceedings, I temporarily moved in with Lauren. She had a spare bedroom in her apartment and had immediately offered it when I explained my plan. "Stay as long as you need," she assured me. "I am proud of you for standing up for yourself. It is not easy to set boundaries with family, especially when they have spent years making you feel like your boundaries do not matter." That evening, the expected calls began. First, Jason, frantic and furious when he returned to find the house empty except for his belongings. "What the hell did you do?" he shouted when I answered. "Where is all the furniture? Where is the television?" "Those are my possessions, and I have removed them from the house," I replied calmly, following Michael's coaching on how to handle these conversations. "You cannot do that. We live here too." "No, you do not. You were guests in my home. Guests who damaged my property, stole from me, and attempted to steal my identity. I have filed police reports for the theft and property damage. I have also filed for a restraining order against you and Kelly. You should be receiving notification of that soon." His response was a stream of profanity and threats. I remained calm and ended the call. Next came my parents, both of them calling repeatedly until I finally answered. "How could you do this to your brother?" my mother cried, leaving him with nothing. "Where is he supposed to sleep? What is he supposed to eat?" "Jason is an adult," I replied. "He is responsible for himself, just as I have been responsible for myself since I was 18. He stole from me, Mom. He tried to steal my identity. He damaged my home. These are crimes, not family squabbles." "We are getting a lawyer," my father threatened. "Jason has rights. He was living in that house. You cannot just throw him out." "I have already consulted with a lawyer," I informed them. "Jason had no legal right to be in my home. You had no legal right to give him access without my permission. I have filed police reports and a restraining order." "You would take your own family to court?" my father asked incredulously. "You forced my hand," I replied. "I tried reasoning with you. I tried setting boundaries. You ignored me every time. You prioritized Jason's wants over my needs, his comfort over my safety and well-being. This is the result of your choices, not mine." The call ended with more threats and recriminations. My mother called me heartless. My father said I was no longer their daughter if I went through with this. I hung up, feeling drained, but more certain than ever that I was doing the right thing. 2 days later, we received notification that the temporary restraining order had been granted. Jason and Kelly were legally barred from entering my property or contacting me directly. The police served them with the order, along with formal notice of the upcoming court hearing. My parents, as I had expected, hired a lawyer for Jason. They claimed he had established tenancy in my home and that I had illegally evicted him. They demanded that I allow him to return to the house and pay damages for the emotional distress I had caused him. Their lawyer contacted Michael, proposing a settlement. Jason would drop all claims if I agreed to let him stay in the house for 6 more months and provided him with $5,000 in relocation assistance. Michael's response was firm. "My client rejects this proposal entirely. We have documented evidence of theft, attempted identity theft, and property damage. We will see you in court." The weeks leading up to the court date were tense. I threw myself into my work, trying to maintain my business despite the personal turmoil. Lauren was an incredible support, giving me space when I needed it, and a shoulder to cry on when the emotional weight became too much. "Your family is supposed to build you up, not tear you down," she told me one evening when I was questioning whether I had gone too far. "You deserve better than what they gave you. You are doing the right thing by standing up for yourself." As the court date approached, I gathered all my evidence. financial records showing I was the sole owner of the house, photographs of the damage, police reports, pawn shop receipts, bank statements showing the attempted fraud. It was a solid case, but I still felt sick at the thought of facing my family in court. The night before the hearing, I barely slept. I kept wondering how we had reached this point. How had my family become so dysfunctional that we needed a judge to resolve our conflicts? But then I reminded myself that I had tried everything else. I had extended olive branch after olive branch only to have them broken and thrown back in my face. This was not the outcome I wanted, but it was the one my family had chosen through their actions. Tomorrow would be the day of reckoning. The courtroom was smaller than I had imagined, intimate in a way that made the confrontation feel even more personal. I sat beside Michael at one table while Jason, Kelly, and my parents sat with their lawyer at another. I avoided eye contact, focusing instead on arranging the documents Michael had asked me to bring. Judge Patricia Simmons entered the courtroom, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She reviewed the case file silently for several minutes before addressing the room. This is a matter of alleged unauthorized occupancy, property damage, theft, and attempted identity theft, she summarized. Let us begin with the plaintiff's case. Michael presented our case methodically. He established that I was the sole owner of the property, having purchased it with my own funds and maintained it without contribution from any family members. He presented the evidence that Jason and Kelly had been given access to my home without my permission through a key provided by my parents. Miss Verna never consented to her brother and his girlfriend taking up residence in her home, Michael emphasized. She was presented with a fait accompli upon returning from work one day. Jason's lawyer, a slick man named Richard Dawson, objected. Your Honor, the defendant had a verbal agreement with his parents that he could stay with his sister. They were acting as intermediaries with the plaintiff's implied consent. Judge Simmons looked skeptical. Do you have any evidence of this implied consent, Mr. Dawson? The family relationship itself suggests a level of implied consent, Your Honor. Families commonly help each other with housing needs. Michael countered immediately. Your Honor, family relationships do not override property rights. The plaintiff has provided text messages and phone records showing she explicitly objected to the arrangement as soon as she discovered it. The judge nodded, making notes. Continue, Counselor. Michael then presented the evidence of property damage, photographs showing wine stains, cigarette burns, broken items, receipts for repairs I had already scheduled, and estimates for work that still needed to be done. Furthermore, Michael continued, we have evidence of theft. He presented the police reports, the pawn shop receipts found in Jason's possession, and statements from my bank about the attempted identity theft. Your Honor, this goes beyond a family disagreement over housing. The defendant engaged in criminal activity while taking advantage of his sister's property. When it was Dawson's turn to present their case, he focused on painting Jason as a victim of circumstances who had fallen on hard times and needed family support. Your Honor, while my client acknowledges there may have been some miscommunication about the living arrangement, he had a reasonable expectation that his sister would help him during a difficult period. The items he allegedly took were family heirlooms that he believed he had some claim to as a member of the family. Judge Simmons interrupted. Mr. Dawson, are you suggesting that family members have legal claims to each other's personal property without explicit permission? Dawson backpedaled. No, Your Honor, but there was a misunderstanding about ownership. The judge looked unimpressed. Continue. The most shocking moment came when Michael called a surprise witness, the manager of the electronics store where Jason had worked before moving into my house. Trevor Reynolds took the stand and confirmed that Jason had been fired for stealing money from the register, not once, as Jason had claimed, but repeatedly over several months. The company had considered pressing charges, but had ultimately decided to simply terminate his employment. We had video evidence of him taking money on at least 7 separate occasions, Reynolds testified. When confronted, he admitted to the theft, but claimed he intended to pay it back. My parents looked stunned. Jason stared at the floor while Kelly shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Judge Simmons then asked Jason directly about the previous incident. Under oath, Jason was forced to admit that he had a history of similar behavior. He had been fired from 2 other jobs for theft before the electronics store. He had been evicted from his previous apartment, not because of a rent increase, but because he had damaged the property during parties. Most damning of all, when questioned about the attempted identity theft, Jason initially denied it. but when presented with the evidence, including IP address records showing the fraudulent application had been submitted from my home internet connection while I was at work, he broke down. I just needed some cash to get back on my feet, he admitted. Verna has so much she would not even notice. My mother gasped audibly. My father put his head in his hands. Judge Simmons called a brief recess. When court resumed, she delivered her ruling. Having reviewed all the evidence and testimony presented today, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. The temporary restraining order against Jason and Kelly is made permanent for a period of 1 year, after which the plaintiff may request renewal if necessary. She continued, the court orders the defendants to pay damages in the amount of $8,752 for property damage and theft. Additionally, the defendants are ordered to complete 40 hours of community service and attend mandatory counseling. Addressing my parents directly, she added, while the court recognizes that parents naturally want to help their children, providing unauthorized access to someone else's home is not acceptable regardless of family relationships. The court advises the defendant's parents to seek family counseling to address these boundary issues. The judge's final words were directed at Jason. Young man, you are fortunate that your sister chose to pursue this matter in civil rather than criminal court. I strongly suggest you use this opportunity to reassess your life choices. This court will not look kindly upon any future infractions. With a bang of her gavel, it was over. Jason and Kelly hurried out without looking at me. My parents lingered, seemingly wanting to approach me, but Michael guided me out through a side door to avoid confrontation. It went as well as we could have hoped, he said as we walked to the parking lot. The restraining order gives you legal protection, and the judgment for damages creates a record of their actions. I felt hollow rather than victorious. I never wanted it to come to this. I know, Michael said gently, but sometimes establishing firm boundaries is the only way forward, especially when other approaches have failed. As I drove back to Lauren's apartment, I wondered what would happen next. The legal battle was over, but the family wounds were still raw and bleeding. I had won in court, but at what cost to my relationship with my parents? Could those bonds ever be repaired? Did I even want to repair them after everything that had happened? The answer was not clear, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. My home was mine, my life was mine, and no one, not even family, had the right to take that from me. 2 weeks after the court hearing, I finally returned to my empty house. Standing in the hollow rooms, I was overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. Pride in having stood up for myself, sadness at the family relationships that had been damaged perhaps beyond repair, anger at the situation I had been forced into, relief that it was over. The damage was even worse than I remembered. Beyond the visible stains and burns, there was a lingering smell of cigarettes that had permeated the curtains and carpets. The guest bathroom shower had mold growing in the corners. One of the kitchen cabinet doors was hanging by a single hinge. I walked through each room, making notes for the contractors who would be coming to repair and clean. In the guest bedroom where Jason and Kelly had stayed, I found remnants of their presence. A forgotten sock under the bed, a crumpled receipt in the closet, an empty liquor bottle behind the nightstand. Each item a small reminder of the chaos they had brought into my life. The restoration process became a metaphor for my emotional healing. Just as I hired professionals to repair the physical damage to my home, I began working with a therapist to address the psychological damage from years of dysfunctional family dynamics. Dr. Matthews helped me understand that the pattern with my parents and Jason had been established long ago. You were assigned the role of the responsible one, she explained during one session. Your brother was assigned the role of the one who needed help. These family roles can be incredibly rigid and difficult to change. She helped me see that my parents' behavior was not necessarily about loving Jason more than me. It was about the roles we had been assigned and their inability to see beyond those roles. This did not excuse their actions, but it helped me understand them. Slowly, I rebuilt my home. New furniture carefully selected to reflect my personal style. Fresh paint in colors that brought me joy. Art that spoke to me. Each choice was deliberate, a statement of self-determination and personal boundary setting. 3 months after the court hearing, my mother called. It was our first communication since that day. Her voice was hesitant, lacking the usual authoritative tone I had grown accustomed to. I wanted to see how you are doing, she said. I gave her a brief, polite update on my business and home renovations. I did not ask about Jason. After an awkward silence, she continued, Your father and I have been doing some thinking and some talking with a counselor. She paused as if the admission was difficult. We may not have been entirely fair to you over the years. It was not exactly an apology, but it was more self-awareness than I had ever heard from her. Jason is in a program, she added, for his issues with taking things that do not belong to him and his other problems. He is staying in a halfway house. I was surprised. That sounds like a positive step. It is, she agreed. The court-ordered counseling was actually helpful. The counselor referred him to this program. He is also doing his community service at a homeless shelter. He seems different, more accountable. We talked for a few more minutes before saying goodbye. It was a small step, but it was something. Over the following months, my relationship with my parents slowly began to mend. It would never be what I had once hoped for, but it was evolving into something more balanced. They respected my boundaries now, perhaps because they had seen the consequences of ignoring them. Jason and I remained estranged. According to my parents, he was making progress in his program, but I was not ready to reestablish contact. Perhaps someday, but not yet. Some wounds take longer to heal than others. Lauren remained my rock throughout this process. Family is not just about blood, she reminded me often. It is about who shows up for you, who respects you, who values your well-being. She helped me build a chosen family of friends who supported and respected me. We had dinner parties in my renovated dining room, game nights in my new living room. They filled my home with laughter and positive energy, cleansing it of the negative memories. Unexpectedly, Michael became part of this chosen family. What started as professional consultations over coffee to discuss the aftermath of the case evolved into friendship and eventually something more. He understood boundaries in a way few others did, having seen the consequences of their violation in his professional life. "You know what impressed me most about you," he told me one evening as we sat on my new patio furniture watching the sunset. "Your clarity. Even when your family was making you doubt yourself, even when they tried to make you feel selfish for having boundaries, you knew what was right. That kind of self-trust is rare." The hardest lesson I learned through this ordeal was that love should never require the sacrifice of your self-respect. For years, I had accepted the dynamic with my family because I thought that was what love looked like. I thought love meant always giving, even when it hurt, even when it was unfair. Now I understood that real love includes respect. It includes reciprocity. It includes acknowledging the other person's needs and boundaries. What my family had asked of me was not love. It was exploitation disguised as family obligation. Today, my home is fully restored, more beautiful than before. My business continues to thrive. I have a circle of friends who respect me and a partner who values my boundaries. Most importantly, I have a new understanding of my own worth. I still think about Jason sometimes, wondering if he has truly changed, if he has found his way to accountability and independence. I hope so, for his sake. But my happiness is no longer tied to his choices. My life is my own, built through my own efforts, protected by my own boundaries. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their destructive behavior. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from relationships that consistently diminish you. And sometimes standing up for yourself, even when it feels selfish, even when others try to make you feel guilty, is the bravest, most necessary thing you can do. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did it affect your relationship with them? If you have been through something similar, I would love to hear your story in the comments. Please like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with anyone who might be struggling with family boundaries. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that protecting your peace is never selfish. It is essential.